So, been a rough, crappy week. I would say this is probably the worst mental health week for me in a long time. Tuesday was, I knew it was within the realm of possibility that we might lose, but I didn't expect what I saw. I'm guessing a lot of you were unpleasantly surprised too. And I just wanted to take some time right now to just talk about some of the stuff that happened and I guess what we can expect from here. And I will say, if you have any thoughts or comments as we are going through all this section, leave your comments. We'll get to them while I'm talking. We don't even have to wait until the end of the segment. But I guess, and I'm going to be rambly as we go through this. I'll do my best, though. But I guess the thought that went through my head is it was sickening. It was a replay of 2016 with the difference being in 2016, I was shocked that Trump managed to scrape out a victory. And this time I braced myself for it and I was just numb. Like, really? That many Americans still, I know you were around 8 years ago and 4 years ago. I know you lived through the first Trump era and you still don't care. And you still don't know why that was a bad thing. You still want to go back to everything we dealt with for those years. And the answer to that is, I still don't think, and I haven't seen any data to back this up, it's not like people flocked to Trump. He is still as off-putting now as he ever was. It seems like, according to whatever data is out there, that people were just mad about inflation. They were mad about prices of things, as if the president of the United States has a dial that controls egg prices from the Oval Office. And so, just like they did in other countries, so many people who don't care about anything that goes on in the news on any given day, they do not care about the threat that Trump brings to the table. They are not paying attention to the crazy things he says or does. They're not paying to the jokes made at his rallies or anything Kamala Harris is saying about policy. Those people were just like, the prices of eggs are too much, and so I'm going to blame the president, not realizing that if you get Republicans in charge, it's only going to get worse. Yeah, like, I wasn't surprised, disappointed, but not shocked. And I want to say, like, it's not because so many Americans are dumb. It's because so many Americans just don't pay attention to this stuff. They do vote, but like, there are a lot of people who weren't paying any attention to the race. And it's weird, as someone who is obsessed with politics and watches like cable news in my spare time for fun, it is weird to realize, yeah, that I'm the weird one. Most people pay no attention to anything. So this isn't even misinformation convinced so many Americans that they should do the wrong thing. It's that a lot of people, enough to change the outcome, just decided to take it out on the incumbent. Which means if it wasn't Kamala Harris on the ticket, it probably would not have mattered. I think she ran as normal, decent of a campaign as you could have had, given the situation she was in. I don't think a different candidate would have done any better. I certainly don't think Joe Biden would have done any better. But it makes it seem like the whole thing was futile unless Democrats could figure out how to communicate in a certain way. That also brings up the issue of, like, back. There we go. I don't know why that tuned out. But I think another thing that concerns me is, how do you reach all those people who don't seem to have any awareness of what's happening or why Trump's ideas, policies would be bad for them? And that's a hard thing to do, because the right-wing ecosystem is, yeah, the average constituent doesn't understand economics or civics, and I don't blame them. Most people do. They have to work. They have a family. They got kids to take care of. They're not paying attention to this stuff. Leave it to other people to figure out. I'm not even mad at them about that. The question is, how do you reach people who are not watching the news, who are not reading papers or reading websites or watching live streams like this? And this is where it gets really tough, because the one thing the right wing has going for it is they can get all their information from Fox News and just have it injected into their veins. or Joe Rogan can spread misinformation to a massive amount of people, not only do those right-wing figures have a huge reach, they have a lot of money that is backing them up. And there is a joke that I've probably said before, but like right-wing podcasters, bloggers, whatever, they have an infrastructure where billions of dollars are at their disposal. There are people who will pay them tons of money if they're effective at spreading propaganda. Meanwhile, progressive and liberal outfits have like $4 that are rotated amongst all of us. You know what I mean? There is no left-wing version of Joe Rogan who can disseminate information to everybody, because I think part of it is that being Joe Rogan, being an alpha male type, being someone who is so confident about everything, that requires you to just say, I'm right, this is the way it is, and everyone else who's not me is wrong. And quite frankly, people who are liberal have the ability to have nuance in their thinking, that this is why I believe I'm right. This is what the facts say, but here's where there's room for disagreement. That is not this. That's never going to generate the same audience as someone who just says, this is the way it is. I'm right here. You just need information. I'm your like metaphorical daddy, and I will tell you how it is. Like that sort of arrogance is not on the other side, which makes it really hard to reach people. And there's no billionaires saying we will pay for groups to create an information environment like that. So it's really hard to reach those people. And that makes it harder too. This comment, U.S. presidency has a 2-year term limit, so I'm a little soothed that Trump won't be running again. See, I don't know about that. This is my fear. He could very well, I'm sure they've already started making this case, that the Constitution says, like, you can't serve 2 consecutive terms. And therefore, he can run again if he wants on a technicality. And no Republican's going to say no to that. And it doesn't matter how old he is. So, like, I don't know why we're relying on traditions and norms at this point, because those are out the window, right? So anyway, I agree with you that Dems didn't listen and Joe Biden didn't listen. But the thought I kept having this week is that even if Kamala Harris pivoted on the Democrats' stance on Israel and Gaza and did what so many activists wanted her to do, I don't think that would have changed much of anything. Like, even if she wins Michigan, that wasn't enough to win the presidency. So add it up, fine. But I think if inflation wasn't the issue, if people actually understood that Donald Trump is going to make their prices worse, it's going to make prices higher, it's going to put less money in their pockets, that would have been enough to overcome all the headwinds that Democrats had to go up against. And that's frustrating, because then it seems like all these issues we all care about, whether it's foreign policy or church-state separation or anything else, how much of it matters? That's frustrating to me. I think this is a reminder that, you know, when Joe Biden won in 2020, that was that was the aberration. That was the election that should not have happened. Like, Trump is the norm. Trump is where America's at, because Americans aren't looking for good policies, and they're not looking for a leader who actually does stuff. They're just looking for someone who sounds confident and tells them whatever lies they want to hear. And that is frustrating, because I care about facts and I care about reality. Yes, the demons are attacking me today, and that's also frustrating. Like, it is troubling to me that the year that the pandemic hit us all is also maybe the best year we've had election-wise, because people who may not pay attention to news otherwise were paying attention, and they needed somebody to take their anger out on. So they decided to vote against Trump, right? That was the highest. More people voted in the 2020 election than this year, even though the stakes were much higher this time around. But okay, let's keep talking about, what does this mean now? Because right now, what this means is things are going to be bad for church-state separation and civil rights and reproductive freedom, bad for Ukraine, all of our foreign allies, definitely bad for Palestinians. It's bad for science and climate and common sense, and all the issues that get us worked up about everything. Those are pretty much gone. Like, they are going to be in big trouble, and we're going to have to play defense on those issues for the conceivable future. And that is troubling to me because I feel like we've been playing defense for decades now, because even if Democrats are in charge, you still got to do battle with the Supreme Court. It bugs me that the worst people pretty much got everything they wanted. That the people who have empathy and expertise and who value what experts say, the people who care so much and who want the best for everyone else, we lost again. Meanwhile, you have Trump, who doesn't give a shit about anybody, who is surrounded by, yes, a lot of very dumb people, but also a lot of very rich people who are only out for themselves. They just waltz in there and they get the credit for doing nothing, while the side that tries to do stuff gets the blame for not being perfect. Like, the standards for the two parties are completely different. The media holds them to different standards. I know this was said, but Kamala Harris had to be flawless. Donald Trump gets to be lawless. And that is infuriating as well. And he's only gotten worse since he was in office the first time around. There is a famous saying that the people who can't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. And we are now going to be ruled by people who will do everything in their power to make sure we don't know history. Right? We can't learn about the past. These are the people who have tried to ban books and whitewash American history. We definitely don't want white people feeling bad about slavery. They reject science. They rejected it during the pandemic. They reject climate change. They reject everything we know when it comes to science. They now get another chance to turn their ignorance into policy. I don't know if RFK Jr. is going to become the head of whatever agency he wants, but the fact that that's a possibility should be very disturbing to a lot of people, because that guy doesn't care about science. Whoever Trump puts in charge of the Department of Education, they're not interested in public schools. Whoever it's going to be, they're going to want to either siphon money to private religious schools, or they're going to want to dismantle the entire agency to begin with. So that's infuriating. Can you just imagine what's going to happen if there's another natural disaster in a blue state? Is that state going to get any help? Are we going to see like another Katrina type event? That's scary to think about. What if there's another pandemic and we have to take precautions as a country to prevent it from spreading? That's not going to happen because the people who spread disinformation are now running the system. I appreciate that, Elizabeth. The Constitution says no one should be elected more than twice, and no person who is, and that includes no person who has held the office of president or acted as president. I just don't think they're going to care. I think they will argue that it doesn't mean that, it means consecutively, so it doesn't matter if they were elected separately. And and then if it goes to the Supreme Court, what do you think the Supreme Court's going to do? So, yeah, the Constitution says that. We know what it means. It doesn't matter, does it? Because the people who skirt the law and who ignore the law are now the people who get to write the law. Let's talk about some other aspects of this. What happens when the economy collapses because the people in charge of it are going to destroy it? Who's going to get the blame for that? You know what Trump's going to do. He's going to blame Democrats somehow. The ghost of Joe Biden will control the markets when they are bad. He's going to take credit when things go well. Biden passes the Infrastructure Act, so when bridges get built in a couple of years, Trump's going to be there to like cut the ribbon on the whole thing. And a whole bunch of very gullible Americans are going to be like, well, I guess Trump did it. I saw Obama give a rally speech last week where he said Donald Trump sent a check during the pandemic and he signed his name on it, and people act like he did them a favor, even though Obama sent them checks during the recession and Biden sent them checks for other reasons, and they didn't bother putting their name on it. It's like, well, yeah, why didn't you put your name on it? Why would you call it like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act when you could just call it the Democrats did this because too many of you don't know what you're doing Act or something like that? Why is it always incumbent on our side to reach out to the other side? And you never, like, Kamala Harris made a big deal of saying she would put a Republican in her cabinet, which I promise you no liberals were clamoring for. How many people are asking Donald Trump if he's going to put a Democrat in his cabinet? They would never. ask him to do that because they know he would never do it, because Republicans are not expected to play by the same rules. One side is expected to be the adults in the room and reach out to people who disagree with them and deal with bad faith attacks from their own side and the other side. And Republicans are held to no standards whatsoever. And that's what's going to be annoying too, because who's going to call them out on this stuff? Okay, so this comment is that the Republican Party has imploded. Democratic Party has failed. Maybe it's the time for a solid third party. Maybe, but what party is going to be able to get the level of interest? It's not Jill Stein. She's back in her cubbyhole for the next 4 years. She's not doing any work. What third party candidate can get the interest that the Democratic Party has right now with its infrastructure and national, like everyone knows who the Democrats are nationally. I say this as a frustrated Democrat, but there is no third party. It would be nice if there were. It would be nice if we functioned like Parliament in other places, but we don't. We have a two-party system. There is no third party right now, which means Democrats are expected to be the big tent for everybody, and the Republicans can cater to a very small tent of very angry people, and then they bring in the most uninformed people in the country, and that's enough. That tends to be enough. So I don't buy this argument that we... I would love to have a third party that matches my views on a lot of things, because the Democrats don't do it. That party doesn't exist right now, and there's no reason to think it's going to be up and running and powerful enough in a matter of a couple of years to do anything of that nature. Also worrying, the Senate is now in Republican control. That means, practically speaking, Donald Trump can appoint any nominee he wants to any cabinet position, agency, department lead, and he will get everybody approved. Imagine what that means for the Supreme Court. You can expect Samuel Alito to retire any minute now. You can expect Clarence Thomas to retire any minute now. Maybe not Clarence Thomas, because he's got nothing better to do. But like, I think someone put it in the Atlantic today, like, Samuel Alito is ready to retire. He wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade. He did it. He caught his white whale. He's got nothing else to do. Those 70-year-old guys can retire at any second, and Donald Trump will replace them with a fetus wearing a MAGA hat, and they will have, literally, Donald Trump will have then appointed the majority on the Supreme Court. He will own the Supreme Court all by himself. Why? Because Senate Republicans are just going to rubber stamp anyone he nominates. Doesn't matter what their credentials are. Doesn't matter what their judicial philosophy is. And that's frustrating. Like, maybe there was hope that Joe Biden ultimately has nominated one person. Donald Trump nominated 3, and he'll get to do another few this time around. So that's infuriating to think that we are losing the court. The only silver lining there is a lot of the battles we're going to have over the next several years will take place in courtrooms, just like they did during the first Trump administration. And the only silver lining to a fully Trump-owned Supreme Court is that most cases never get that far. Lower court judges can take care of most of the issues, and the Supreme Court just doesn't have time to get around to destroying everything. I don't know if that's good news or bad news. Democrats could theoretically right now flip the House. Doesn't look like they're going to. If they're able to do that, at least they can stop bad legislation from getting passed. Not that I'm worried that Republicans are going to do much with legislation, but it looks like they're not going to do that either, which, I mean, part of me took some delight in that in a perverse sort of way, because if Republicans have a trifecta, and the thing is, they don't know how to govern. They're not interested in passing policies that are going to help people. So if they have total control of government, I want to say you can actually blame them for everything they pass and don't pass, because they should be able to get everything done. My fear is that they will still find a way to blame Democrats for anything they do that is going to hurt people, right? Even if Democrats manage to win the House, they will only control 1/6 of the federal government. Right? They don't have the executive. They don't have the judicial. They have half the legislative branch. So I wonder, does a Supreme Court justice even have to have a background in law? No, they don't. They do not. There are no rules. You would think they should have experience as a lower court judge or an appellate court judge, and the answer is nope. Doesn't matter. I mean, George W. Bush back in the day nominated his personal lawyer to be on the Supreme Court. And Harriet Mier would have been horrible, but you know what? Because she was shamed out of being the nominee, that's how we got Sam Alito. So, yeah, you can nominate anybody you want. I've seen someone suggest Sonia Sotomayor, who has health problems, should step aside right now while Democrats have the Senate and Joe Biden, and he should nominate Kamala Harris to be the Supreme Court justice, which is stupid. She's 60. Why would you do that? But no, you don't have to have, there are no rules. Could be anybody. I wonder what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. I wonder what's going to happen with the legal battles and what they're going to try to do. It's scary that J.D. Vance is going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency because he's also just an online troll, but he's young and he's evil. Like he could do a lot of harm. Let's talk about Project 2025, right? Like that was the internal playbook that we were rightly told is very scary in terms of this is the agenda that Trump wants to enact. Trump's people want to enact. The people who wrote Project 2025 are his former administration officials. And that could be frightening. I'll talk about that in just a second in terms of the specifics over what that could include. I wanted to mention that, you know, there were some bright spots in the election. Like we elected 2 Black women to the Senate. We elected a trans person to the House. There were states like Missouri and New York and Arizona and Nevada that enshrined abortion rights in their state constitutions. Now, I don't know if that'll matter if the Republicans manage to get a national abortion ban through, which you know they want to. I wonder how many of them are worried that if they do that, it'll unleash a dragon and they're better off just letting things be chaotic right now. Even in Florida, they got 57% support to put abortion rights in their constitution. But in Florida, the rules are weird. You need 60% to get that sort of thing done. So technically failed, even though the abortion rights side had a majority. I didn't want to be just a downer this whole time. I want to remind you, some of you are old enough like me to remember this. George W. Bush was elected in 2000. I didn't want him elected. It was scary when he got elected, and it was bad. I mean, 9/11 happened and stuff. It was really bad with George W. Bush. I thought in 2004, enough Americans would have been so done with that guy that they would have booted him out of office with room to spare. And obviously that's not what happened. He got reelected, I think with even bigger margins or something. And that was disappointing. And that was, I think I still felt the same type of numbness back then that I felt this week. It's been that long since that's happened. The one silver lining is that things eventually got so awful and people were so fed up with him and his administration and their incompetence and cruelty back then that it seemed like more people than just the politically active ones were ready to do something about it. And not only did that happen, it set the scene for someone to come in and actually galvanize that anti-Bush crowd. And Obama, yes, generational candidate, but also he did a good job running that campaign. That's why he won. He didn't just win with by a slim margin. He demolished John McCain that year. I'm not saying he was a great president either. There were issues, but again, compared to the past. So my hope is that Republicans are so incompetent and another 4 years of Trump are just going to lead to the same awfulness and cruelty and devastation that 4 years from now, who knows where we'll be. It won't be in a good place, but enough people will be ready for a change. And maybe even the people who were like, well, egg prices are high, so who cares about democracy? Those people will be ready to vote against Trump or his next, his replacement as well, right? I hope that's where we go from here. I'm assuming the electorate will make them pay for it. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think we spend so much time here talking about Christian nationalism. I think a lot of people are going to be pissed off when they realize that their lives are going to be dictated by what the most radical white evangelicals want and believe, because the most irrational, delusional voices in that movement are about to be elevated to positions of power. Like, even if they're not in the administration, they are going to be acting like they have the ear of Donald Trump. They will talk about Christianity so much in a nation that's becoming decreasingly Christian. I wanted to show you this. I wanted to show you this exit poll that I found interesting. Check this out. And this is an exit poll. They're notoriously unreliable, but it's going to take months before we get more specific data. But check this out. When it came to religion this week, look at what happened here. Actually, I'm going to scroll down for a second. Look at the white evangelical vote. 82. You can see that up here. 82% of white evangelicals backed Donald Trump, it seems. That is a number that is actually slightly higher than in 2016 and 2020, but it's roughly the same. It was always like 80%. 80% of white evangelicals always support Donald Trump. That didn't change this time around. And I mean, what does that tell you about their religion, about their values? They don't have any. They are giving up everything they've ever been taught about Jesus, and they're going with whatever Trump wants. And that's not surprising. But look at up here. This is also interesting. When it came to the nones, the non-religious Americans, the atheists, the agnostics, the people who just don't believe in a higher power, or they believe in something, but they don't define it, 71% of the nones backed Kamala Harris. And the reason that's interesting is because that is actually much higher than the percentage of nones who backed Joe Biden 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I think it was like 65%. Now we're at 71. And you could see in the parentheses there, we are now 24% of the population. A quarter of America has no religious affiliation, and we are overwhelmingly supportive of the Democratic candidate, to the point that we are kind of their base, if you want to parse it that way. Meanwhile, white evangelicals, they make up 22% of voters. There are more of us than there are of them, and we are slowly becoming a bigger base for the Democrats than they are for the Republicans. And I think that's worth keeping an eye on our side. I think that's important for Democrats to remember, because we're not looking for someone who uses the language of faith or who tries to bring people into the fold by using biblical language. We are looking for someone who's going to fight for us and protect our civil rights, our religious freedom, because Republicans are not going to do that. So what else was there to say? If there's other stuff, I'll get to it. I don't have a good answer on how to beat back all the misinformation that we have seen that contributed to the rightward shift of the country, all the misinformation we're about to see over the next few years. I also don't know what could have changed the minds of like half the country that seems immune to reality. I don't know that Kamala Harris could have done any one thing or two things that would have changed the outcome. Maybe you could argue if Biden dropped out earlier, she would have had more time and she would have had to navigate tougher waters in a contested primary. But given the circumstances, I don't know what anyone else could have done. I don't think a different candidate would have pulled this out. So I do want to, I'll try to leave this on a semi-positive note. It is easy to feel cynical about this, that everything you care about is meaningless, that it's all very pointless to be active and to care about this stuff, because the people who are ignorant and against you are always going to outnumber you. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. It's not that the debate didn't matter and the, half-filled Trump arenas had no effect. That the endorsement, like Taylor Swift's endorsement, didn't really move the needle, did it? Or all the contributions, the $1 billion plus that Kamala Harris raised, didn't overcome the billionaires backing Donald Trump, or our vibes were better than theirs. It seems like that didn't matter. However, the fact that we have that infrastructure in place and the fact that we can generate that sort of enthusiasm, that is a necessary ingredient to taking back control. What we learned this week is that it's not sufficient. We got to still do more. But if you don't have that level of infrastructure and support, nothing will happen. What I hope happens over the next few years is that the pressure starts to build. That starts, whether it's protests or marches whether that's building up the democratic infrastructure in your communities so that they can get people elected at a local level where they have a bigger impact on your lives. When Trump does something awful and the Republican Party does something awful, we need to make them pay for it. We need to make sure our best communicators have a way to make sure that gets through to people. I think I read somewhere that a Republican pollster, someone who works with a lot of focus groups, when she asked people if they were concerned about Trump being an autocrat and being that sort of leader, their response was, what the hell is an autocrat? Because that type of language doesn't get through to a lot of people. So when we talk about economic policies, it's not enough to say the stock market is doing well. It has to be, here's how it's going to help you personally at the grocery store. And again, a lot of people know this. It doesn't ever seem to seep into the top levels of the party. I think too many Americans are also nostalgic for a utopia that never existed. They want to go back. They think things were good with Trump. They weren't. They want to go back to some time. I've seen so many people saying Democrats need to stop talking about trans issues. It's like, buddy, I promise you, Kamala Harris spent zero time talking about trans issues. Those are things Trump and the right-wing media do to try to get the spotlight on out groups. They will do commercials about trans people and why they're awful, or they will do commercials about something one activist said and try to make it a huge thing. And then Democrats are left playing defense all the time, even though they are not the ones pushing that stuff. We need to get better at making Republicans pay for their incompetence. I hope we figure that out. Carla asks, how do you think Christian nationalism will affect the LDS Church and Scientology since they have so much cash? I don't think the Trump administration cares about what Mormons are going to do or Scientologists are going to do. They're going to enact the policies they want to based on a very conservative interpretation of the Bible. And if that works for your religion, maybe it won't matter. I don't think the money is the issue here. Policies made at the federal level are going to affect all of us. It's going to affect you in a blue state. It's going to affect you if you have money. Prices are going to be higher even if you have money. So I don't think it's going to affect them that much in a negative way. They're going to be just fine. I'm asking all of you, though. I'm asking all of you, and I'm saying this to myself as much as anything else. Please don't just give up. Don't tune out as hard as it is like this week. Progress is never smooth. Other people before us have been through worse, and they've been through it for a longer amount of time, and they kept fighting, whether it's the civil rights movement, whichever type of civil rights movement you want to talk about, women's rights. They had to fight for through a lot worse, and they got through it. Why? Because they kept pushing. They kept bringing new people in to do the work with them. It requires that sort of constant vigilance. And I say this as someone who was demoralized in 2004 and demoralized in 2016. And I'm demoralized, I feel, more than ever now. But there is a way to get through it. It's okay to take some time out from all of this. Get your mind away from the elections and the news right now. But soon, find a local group you can join. Find some candidates you really support who really match what you believe. Work with them. Work for them. Help them out so they can get elected, because I think that fight's going to be even more fierce next time around. This question is, do you think they're going to try and declare that America is a Christian nation? I don't think they're going to pass a law or proclamation saying that. I think that would be almost too dumb even for them. But I think what they will do is they will do a lot of things that are awful, and they are going to justify it by saying things like, this has to do with our Judeo-Christian history. Like, they'll work it into the conversation as if this is part of who we are as a country. And then all of us will be like, that's not actual history. If you learned history, which I know the Trump people don't want people to do, you would know that. But I don't think they're going to pass a law saying we're officially a Christian nation. That's too blunt. They will just try to insinuate that. Who knows? The Supreme Court might say we're going to undo marriage equality. Why? Because our Judeo-Christian history says marriage is between a man and a woman. We're going to leave anything else to the states. I mean, they could do that. I don't think they will be as blunt as declaring it a Christian nation. They'll do a lot of things leading up to that, but they won't go that far. Other questions about this. The people that voted for Trump, in my opinion, do not live in reality. But the actual reality of it is that they believe they were making things better because they were allowed to live in tribal something. Like, I agree with you. I don't think they live in reality. I think they're susceptible to a lot of misinformation. They really are frustrated with the way things are going because, again, whatever good news we could talk about, the United States did better economically post-pandemic than I think any other country in the world. What does that mean for you personally? Sorry, not everything affects you personally. Like, the price of everything could be much worse, but it's not, because we're actually doing better than everyone else. But if you don't pay attention to that stuff, you just say, well, gas is higher than it was like 4 years ago during the pandemic when no one was traveling anywhere. Who should I blame for that? Let me blame whoever's in charge, which is a horribly dumb, short-sighted way to think about it, but that is how people think. So I wish Democrats would get better at selling themselves as the solutions, because by and large, federally, they have been. I read Jesus and John Wayne. Their values are white patriarchy and hierarchy. Yeah, it's a great book by Kristen Dumais. This is what the right has become. They value this idea that men are in charge, white men specifically, that women are the helpmates, that their job is to give birth. Doesn't matter. No exceptions to the rule. You got pregnancy complications. No one cares. Just you give birth. And that also implies that I got to look up to my pastor to look over me. I got to look to a president who talks like an authoritarian and a strongman to look after me. I need someone to babysit me and tell me it's going to be okay. They love that stuff. Yeah, Jesus and John Wayne is not the first book to lay that out, but it's true. I mean, that's what evangelical churches teach too. The guy on stage, the one in charge, is the one you trust. And if that guy tells you how to vote, that's how you vote. You don't get a mind of your own. And within the family, you listen to the husband. Why do you think they got so mad at those ads that had like Julia Roberts narrating and women saying, you can vote secretly for whoever you want. Your husband doesn't have to know. I mean, I don't think a lot of women were doing that, frankly, but the idea of it suggests that, hey, you don't have to live in a patriarchal home. And I think that offended a lot of right-wing men too. Other questions here. I'm a single male atheist living in Colorado that doesn't plan on marrying or having kids. How worried should I be if Project 2025 becomes a reality? Here's why I think people need to care, even if they're not affected by abortion or children, or directly, I should say, by those things. Among the things in Project 2025, what they want to do, they want to drastically alter the nature of public schools, whether it's posting 10 commandments inside every building or taking money away from your public schools and giving them to private schools. Like, I don't think Republicans realize how mad parents are when some of those small right-wing groups in their communities try to get books banned. A lot of parents hate that. You go after public schools and the public school system, you are now affecting people who might otherwise stay out of government or stay out of politics as a news thing. Like, they may not pay attention, but you go after their kids, you go after their schools, they're going to come after you. But that is what Project 2025 talks about. And that is something as a society we should be concerned about, how Republicans want to destroy public schools. What else should you be concerned about? The way they're going to change the nature of judicial appointments. Like, white Christian male is going to be the default for a lot of positions, and that sets a bad precedent for everything. I don't know what's going to affect you personally, but I think when things affect your community and the people you love, that matters too, right? And Project 2025 is all about pushing a certain specific narrow vision of what the country should be like on everybody. And if you're not part of their club, you're not just ignored, you're punished for it. And that's disturbing as well. Like, they want a biblically based definition of marriage and religion. Here's another example. The Department of Health and Human Services, they say this in Project 2025. there was a question about, should we shut down churches as gathering places in the event of another pandemic? And obviously, when the pandemic was going on in 2020, we couldn't have large gatherings, especially where people were going to gather in one room without masks, without social distancing, and sing and talk like churches. Like, that was bad. So they shut down, a lot of states shut down big public gatherings. And then the religious right got so mad about that. They acted like that was an affront to them personally. Like the government was trying to shut down churches, which is BS. But Project 2025 actually says, in the event of another pandemic, we're going to make sure you cannot shut down churches and you cannot enforce a mask mandate or mandate vaccinations at a federal level. Like, that's the sort of thing where I don't care if you don't think Project 2025 will affect you. If there's another pandemic, that's going to get to you whether you like it or not. And you're going to want to have competent, science-driven people in charge in a situation like that. Project 2025 would get rid of all of that. If not like a specific policy, we know who they're going to elevate to those positions where you get to talk about that. There will be no more Anthony Fauci's. It'll be people like RFK Jr. or Joseph Ladapo in Florida, people who have made a career out of spreading BS. And that should scare everybody. I work in construction in Montana, and on Wednesday, everyone was talking about liberation. I'm fucking tired. Hey, I hear you. You know, Montana's interesting because my understanding is in the state, they actually they shifted more to the left as a state. Like, they elected more Democrats to the state house and the state senate than they've ever done in any year. They did that this week, even though the state is overwhelmingly red when it comes to federal elections. But yeah, this is the thing. The people who are excited about liberation, obviously they have no clue what they're talking about. The question is, how do you get that message through to them? And maybe it takes someone like you who works with them and knows them to work that into your conversations, how the things they think they want are not the things they want. I don't know what the best way to reach them is, because if they're getting misinformation, we need better sources of information. If they're not paying attention to anything, then it'll take people close to them to convince them it's wrong. My fear is they're going to find out the hard way, whatever way that is, that this is not about liberation. They're not going to get more free speech. They're not going to get higher paychecks or a better pension or a better union job. It's not going to happen because Trump is in charge. And if they don't know that, I mean, do they want to learn about it? What are you going to do to help them understand it? That falls on all of us to try to fix.